Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel simply is called Discerning What is True, and broadcasting the third part, that is, tonight, Through Science to Religion, Part 3 by Alvin Kuhn, K-U-H-N. And so what I'm going to be doing here is sharing the last part of this particular book that he written back, I think, in it's pretty much a recent book. As well as I recollect here, probably one of the last. He passed away in 1962. So let's get into it here. The section here is called The Pathway Back to Science. So what Alvin Kuhn is trying to do simply is he's speaking of basically that religion itself has dominated the perspective for the last 2,000 years, approximately, maybe not quite that long. And what he's saying simply is that science needs to start standing up for itself and speak about natural law. So we're going to go into this part right now, this segment, and this will be the last part. This is only about 6 pages long. And let me adjust one thing here, the magnifier here, and make it easier for me to read. So, thank you. All this points to the pathway by which science can be made once again the criterion of Bible exegesis. By analogy with things seen and procedures known, the mysteries of the unseen world of spiritual consciousness can be brought within the pale of rational view and made amenable to intelligible explication. If visible things are the material shadows of invisible noumento, then at least the outlines of these invisible forms can be figured from lost it here. That was cast down here. Here comes to the hand point in reference to 2 sweeping items. Then at least its outlines of these invisible forms can be figured from the shape of the shadows that they have cast down here. Here comes to hand the pointed reference of the 2 of the sweeping items of cosmology science. Both testify to the analogical way of seeing man's relation to the cosmos. The first is the statement of Genesis that man was himself constituted in the image and likeness of the heavenly man, the Logos. The second is the comprehensive declaration by deity that the temple which man was ordered to build for the elevation of deity itself was to be constructed, quote, after the pattern shown you in the mound, the pattern of the heavens, end quote. Here was laid down the scientific charter of all religion. Man's life, both in the body and in the spirit, was to be a phenomenon patterned after the form and course of life in cosmic sphere. If one is known, the other can be judged on the basis of proclaimed similarities. The one can be studied as scientifically as the other. Evidence that the biblical sages had the nature pattern methodology in mind is multiplied in the scriptures and in the writings of the philosophers. The world, says the psalmist, is full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters covers the earth. The whole world is full of thy glory again. The world is full of God, states Thales, even before Plato, you see. And let me do something real quick here. I've got something that needs to be reduced a little bit here. Drop it back down. Okay. Plato, quote, day unto day, uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge, end quote. And let us hear this reverent apostrophe of nature's benign influence from the pen of Plutarch. Quote, for the world is a spacious and beautiful temple. This a man is brought into as soon as he is born, where he is not to be a dull spectator of immutable and lifeless images made by human hands, but is to contemplate sublime things, which, as, quote, Plato tells us, The divine mind has exhibited to our senses as likeness of things in the ideal world, having the principles of life and motion in themselves, such as are the sun, moon, and stars. Rivers which are still supplied with fresh accessions of water, and the earth, which was a motherly, indulgent suckers of the plants and feeds her sensitive creatures. Now, since life is the introduction of the most perfect initiation into these mysteries, it is but just that it should be full of cheerfulness and tranquility. End quote. Nature will begin to lose its opaqueness and become translucent with significance when philosophy can teach the world again that we are sent into the physical part of beauty to be trained to see the things exhibited to our senses as the likeness of things in the ideal world. And through that opening of our eyes, learn to discern the reality of spiritual things. If we are shown earthly things and will not believe, how, as the scriptures, are we ever going to discern heavenly things? If, as Plutarch affirms, the earth life is but the introduction in transcendent life and loftier spheres, how are we to progress into these more resplendent experiences if we do not master the rudiments of true being set for us down here? Religion and its Bible are no longer scientifically approachable because ignorance has long ago abandoned any link between them and the world of phenomenon. Religion, both in mental content and in practice, has been made a thing entirely apart from and outside the province of common nature. So here's another example of the duality of science and religion. Again, the whole idea is that we're here on this planet. We are dual beings. We are spirit and we are body or flesh. And so with this also reveals another duality, science and religion. And they must become one. They must come to the point simply that science needs to begin to push its way and express that simply is that what religion is speaking of is not acceptable. Meaning it simply is, it's based, a lot of it based on beliefs is what Alvin Kuhn is speaking of. So to be religious, the individual has to be conditioned to a special susceptibility to an order of irrational psychological persuasions, wholly outside the normal run of everyday motivations. He has to be wrought up to the peculiar sensitivism to certain psychological propensities and receptivities. He must be lifted out of his general commonplace mood and laid open to the impact of forces of exceptional moving power in the emotional and psychic category. Thus has religion been reduced from a cult of virtue to a special sort of fetishism involving types of thaumatic magic. To aid this eerie orientation, the literal reading of the Bible is urged upon the neophyte. As the reading goes on, the sense of transference into a world of unreality, of bizarre magical occurrences, grows apace. The sense of the presence of a power, a miracle working efficiency is diffused through the whole area of the mind. The hallucination grows that by unctions brooding the age of miracle or magic may be superinduced to return for the individual, thus inviting it. And so the vicious cycle of mental degeneration goes round and round till the victim lives only dreamily in the actual world around him and equally under a trance spell in that imaginative world of scriptural supernaturalism. Thus, he misses the reality of both worlds. It was Emerson who wrote that the true vision of God was the ability to see the miraculous in the common. It was a great and wise discernment of the American sage, the man whose eye is open to the spectacle of thrilling reality before him. For him is he who has come to reverence the majesty and divinity of every commonplace item of the daily picture. This is a phenomenon that, as children, as we are children, we actually are enthralled by this, being spectacular with the animals, the birds flying, such and such at a very young age. And somehow the parents, or them seeing this all their lives, do not take it as being enthralled with it. What's happened simply, they become in some ways attracted to what I call the mundane things, as something that man has made instead of what we call nature. And as we get older, what happens simply is we forget what was so enthralling to us as young boys or young girls in looking at nature. In fact, most children today, folks, don't play outside anymore. You see, what has to be done now is to some employ the offices of symbolism and analogy in the reading of scriptures, that the great volumes of sage wisdom therein embodied will be redeemed from this world, a egregious fantasy and eerie mysticism, and reincorporated once more in the purview of ordinary national rational comprehension. By reconsidering it as an allegory and drama instead of history, its meaning can be brought back out of the bizarre domain of supernatural freakishness and monstrosity, and given homely welcome in the house of commonplace reason. It can be restored from the world of things utterly out of the atmosphere of human naturalism to that world of recognizable reality in which alone man's experiences makes helpful sense and sanity. The proper reconstruction of Bible meaning will bring the whole volume back again into man's familiar world, where the key to it, mightily mysteries, will be the body of truth and knowledge already known to him. Until this is done, the book will continue to lie over, L-I-E, over, in a world wherein he can find no sure footing at any time. That's why it's called a belief system, folks. It's just belief. It's not based upon fact. But, as me and Bill have talked about it, it also reveals, that is the Bible, if you don't look at it literally, is speaking of deeper things. The numbers have a key also. Strange to say, many will not welcome this Sagittarius transfer. They have adjusted their mentation to the hypotheoretic wonderland of the supernatural, which, like any drug or hypnotic stimulant, exerts in subtle seduction or seductive and so critically power, and they are reluctant to be disenchanted. They were regarded as a rude awakening out of a pleasant dream, but it is necessary if they are to progress. When intelligence fails, life has harsh ways of opening blind eyes. The effort to translate the Bible scientifically will call for a radical transposition or redirection of all mental review, but the gain will be enormous. It will bring the truthful reward of a dynamic recharging of the whole individual life with due power, and will veritably open the door for the influx of a true magic, such as will unimaginative, transcendent, the mirage of pietism, obsession of the other sort. The ancient sages called mind, M-I-N-D, the great magician. It alone had power to bring all the vague and wayward impulses of the psyche, the lower human as distinct from the higher spiritual soul, under its orderly and beneficial rulership. Mind was the great, quote, serpent charmer, end quote, the serpent typifying the lower psychic forces. The Bible student will realize for the first time what magic there is in the clear grasp of truth, scientifically apprehended in places of the chimerical hallucinations of afflicted mysticism. It's going to be difficult for the general reader, indoctrinated and mentally drugged as he has been by the traditions of centuries, to readjust the focus of his views so as to bring the meaning of Bible material within the scope of entirely natural possibility. The great change of view can be envisioned only through the lens of a totally new insight into the true purport of scriptural contents, and such insights can be gained only through the overt realizations that the narrative of the Bible books is not that of a factional historical occurrence, but is allegorical, portrayed, and dramatization of the forms of living truth and the patterns and meaning of all history. The Old Testament is not old Hebrew history, as Josephus himself hints, but amazingly profound and subtly paraphrasing of the structure and significance of history. It is not a portion of world history, but a symbolic delineation of the form and purport of human existence. It is Hegelian analysis and structurization, not analytic record. This will come as a revolutionary dictum, subversion of all orthodox philosophy concerning the ancient writings, but the collaboration of its truth is here in abundant measure since the finding of the Rosetta Stone, and the Egyptian evidence transforms the entire vista of interpretation and exegesis. The next section is called Allegory, Truer Than History. This is what me and Phil have talked about. Is the Bible is not a history book, folks. That's not what it is. You see. But so many people believe this, especially in the Western world. They come in with blinders, that is a certain spectacle, that is a glasses, and see simply nothing but literalism. They see what they call thinking is history. As history, the Bible events remain wholly outside the area of science. That is, mystery, magic, miracles, and marvel of the supernatural are not amenable to scientific judgment, except as it can trace the operation of the law, even in the operations of abnormal psychology. Science has no way of gauging the whimsicalities and caprices of an arbitrary deity. Science can have no envisionment of deity unless it can discover the laws and principles of regularity in that deity's action, or irregular and eccentric deity action. It can have no standard of measurement. Psychology is heroically striving to discover the science underlying all human behavior. But how is man to gauge the motives and actions of deity unless he can find out the code of principle by which deity regulates its conduct? As long as miracle religion stands on the basis that God of old did act and it eternally can act from sheer arbitrary will, it holds the Bible entirely beyond the reach of science. Science stands mute in the presence of naked will as the root cause of phenomenon, unless indeed will itself can be found to be operating under fixed norms. The science of theology properly properly aims to understand and expound the basic archaic of the will of God. Only as a manifest expression of the will of God can be seen to be under law, or indeed itself to be the law, can science regard theology as within its purview. Even in history as sheer event, the pure fiat of independent free wills, science can have little traffic. Only if the operation of free wills can be subsumed under codes of law and forms of direction can science find its way in the study of history. No one has ever thought of classifying history as a scientific study. Only with meager success has it been classed as susceptible to philosophical interpretation. Hegel made an effort in this direction. The conception is widespread, however, that the stream of history unfolds the pattern of God's will in creation. This is legitimate and sound, but how capable man's genius is to trace the design of this pattern is the vital question. Presumably, only the omniscient God could view history as a science, and it is questionably if they would bother to follow the millions of threads of linked causations winding their obvious, not obvious, but devious ways through the unthinkable mass of human motivation that conspired to bring forth the incalculable run of human actions. History could be a true science only if one knew, as presumably God alone does, the entire interlacing of the infinite warp and woof of all manifested actions of all creatures, I should say. This is beyond man. But for precisely this reason, it is myth. This is why I continue to use these words, because you need to understand it is not history, because you're looking at it literal. But for precisely this reason, it is myth, allegory, parable, drama, numerograph, and astrological pictograph that reintroduces the possibility of scientific envisionment into history. For it is these that, ignoring the individual events, supply the charts of laws, principles, forms, and therefore the meaning of all event. They provide just those indispensable bases for the interpretation of history as a science. As recorded history, therefore, the Old Testament is not science. Theologians have endeavored, of course, to throw it into the frame of a presumed graph of the intent of deity, the pattern of Jehovah's governments of a given race of world inhabitants, the alleged events with Abraham, Noah, Moses, Joshua, Jephthah, Saul, Samuel, David, Solomon, were interpreted as painting a form picture of the will of God, the design and motives of his relation to the creative or creature man. Hebrew history as of the Old Testament has been taken as divinely revealed model history. As deity dealt with, quote, Israel, end quote, so would he deal with all people. But this has woefully and disastrously missed the mark. Slow indeed will endurated theory be to realize the sweeping assertion, but come it must when a candid facing of the data of hand since the discovery of the Rosetta Stone is at last achieved. The present tragedy, stress of world events will hasten it. Pressures now bending on humanity will bring changes that otherwise would not have come in centuries. The only hope of lifting religion out from under the pale of hypnotic superstition is to effect the disenchantment of the Western mind of its obsession that the Old Testament is Hebrew history. Only thus can the Bible be restored to its place as a high beneficial influence, as a light to the human mind and teacher of the science of truth. As history is next to valueless, as allegory and drama of the interplay of God and man's linked potency in the human organism. Its whole immeasurably enlightenment has for all mankind. For the reader is not a science if he takes it to be a record of the weird and eccentric actions of both God and men of only two or 3,000 years ago. It will elucidate him if he is led by it to think that life was under some exceptional and fantastic supervision of deity then, which is out of all relation to the naturalness of life experienced by any other person at any time in history. You see, it will be foul, his thinking, if he continues to believe that deity at any time operates in the world under any regime or code of principles other than those laws of nature and of mind which life has been regulated universally. The readjustment of his mind to the interpretation of Scripture as a series of graphs picturing the operation of cosmic law in its external and invariable normality will restore the context of the great book to him as the mightiest science he's ever could have conceived. These graphs must be seen as majestic blueprints of truth and of law, which yield to his deep perspective of their covert design a significant, unspeakable, direct, and crucible vital for him. An enormity of the tragedy of mental confusion and delusion that has befallen Western humanity for close to 2,000 years can at least in minor measure be envisioned if one thinks of the millions of earnest people of fair intelligence who have, under the force of pious persuasion in childhood, gone hopefully to that consecrated fire with zeal to drink the living waters of divine truth, only to be compelled after half an hour's despairing effort to lay aside, hopelessly confused and baffled by the maze of unintelligible, quote, events, those recorded, that is. Most of these millions have opened the book with will and purpose highly consecrated to harmonize their lives with the ordinance of the truth and the right which they expected to find exemplified in the dealings of God with man. But disappointment and perplexity rewarded their sincere enterprise. They found themselves totally unable to understand how to align their lives with the requirements of a deity whose actions as their assembly recorded bore every mark of unaccountable eccentricity and arbitrary whimsicality. What, for instance, could one make of this deity ordering the death of one day of 42,000 Ephraimites who in the 12th chapter of the book of Judges could not pronounce the word Shibboleth, but instead said Sibylle, and were imagination keen enough what a transfiguration of 2,000 years of Western history might be conceived if the millions could have been educated to know that those alleged actions of divine whim or human essentiality held under a cryptic exterior the actual message of the weightiest instruction possible impartation by God to the human mind and the nature and meaning of their own existence here and now, the lifting of the Occidental mind from under its dementia and stupor of believing those narratives historically and setting it clear in their understanding that they are diagrams of the shape and meaning of the history they are now living. Perhaps this is the one hope for the future peace and possible blessedness of the precarious modern civilization. The full story of how a book came to enslave the mind of humanity in the West would be the most thrilling ever told. The series of books to which this essay is the introduction will tell that the story in large part, by unfolding the true purport and meaning of those revealed or reverend scripture, it will be paint the picture of the mental poverty and illusion produced by the false rendering of Bible material. But the vivid discernment of the great tragedy will give bright hope for a transfiguration from dark delusion to radiant intelligence, for by the rediscovery of the ancient knowledge that spiritual realities are grandiose copies of the natural actualities, the majestic glyphs and cryptographs of the sacred scriptures can be read as scientific forms of the eternal truth on which the soul of man must feed as his body must feed on physical food. Not until Western culture is released from the obsession of belief in the Bible's special providence and brought to understand that the operation of law in all realms is the one stupendous miracle of all creation. Will religion be redeemed from hallucinations and derationalization of the gullible child mind of the masses to a scientific cultus of the intelligence? Errant theologies has inflicted upon the Western mind the persuasion that the events narrated in the Bible occurred under regime and in a world of special supernatural providence. Now, since the book has stood at the almost universal accepted guide and manual for Western philosophy and morality, it can be seen with starting clearly that this bit of mental conviction has sadly warped our orientation to life out of any true relation in actuality. We have tried to handle the actual problem of life by applying a code of principles believed to have worked under a order of supernaturalism. It is a great wonder that modern history has gone violently askew. The theologians have railed without end against every claim advanced through the centuries that the scriptures were collections of myths, allegories, dramas, glyphs, and graphs of deeper spiritual and mystical realities. They have even defied the authority of their own first intelligent fathers of the church who contended for the allegorical interpretation of scripture. They have insisted that their narrative was of factual history, flying straight into the face of the position of orthodoxy on the wings of paradox and heresy. This series of books will assert and demonstrate the revolutionary doctrine that the historical interpretation of the Bible has wrecked its meaning and derationalized the West. It will abundantly uphold and corroborate the claim that the myths and allegories of the Bible alone laid the foundation, when correctly understood, for a scientific grasp of the meaning of the Bible in the same normal world in which all the rest of man's experience is sanity comprehensively. Seeing through the lens of allegory, the scripture will become again the truly inspired divine revelation of laws and principles in the science of man. And so that is the whole conclusion of this particular part of this book by Alvin Kuhn. I wanted to say something here if I could find it. Yeah, I'm going back to what he says here. This is why would God be in the idea of ordering the death of one day of 42,000 Ephraimites? What is this all about, folks? This is certainly, I mean, if this is true, literally, this is a madman of God. In other words, if this is truly true, okay, let's just speak of this. If this is truly what you say history is, then God would be the madman. He would be a mad God. He would be someone who would simply have a thirst for blood, you see. And even his own, quote, chosen people were destroyed, parts of them, when they did not do what was right, when they were separated and basically fell in a hole during the 40 years in the wilderness, you see. Yeah, what does the number 40 mean, you see? What does it mean? What is the word wilderness? What do you mean wilderness? Was this some... No, this cannot be something literal. But yet this is what people believe. But yet this makes God a tyrant. But people can't see that. They see, well, God can do whatever he wants to do. In other words, we're supposed to be afraid of him. He's, God is not a God who seeks to revenge. And that's the thing people got to understand here. When things go on in your life, we have this struggle. We all do. That we blame God. Something goes wrong, we blame God. Why is this happening? And I'm guilty of that. I know that simply other people have gone through certain things. They don't analyze and see simply that it's their inability to understand what they're going through that they make these mistakes. You see. And the reality simply is that sin itself is simply not understanding. That's what sin is, simply is being confused, not understanding what is going on, not being able to discern what is right and wrong, what is good, you see. It's basically man being ignorant. That's what it means, sinful. Man is ignorant. He doesn't understand who he is. He's told stories by his parents or his grandparents or where he's taught in church. You see, this is where the foundation is put into this whole apparatus of people's minds, and they never go any further than this. And a lot of that is because simply is, and we have to look at this, I've explained this, it's like some people are here for the first time, that is reincarnating. So they're like a kindergarten student. So they don't have any idea what's going on. They can't think. And so their whole lives is basically on a kindergarten level. And so that's what I talk about grace and mercy, is that the whole idea of grace and mercy is that you reincarnate here many, many, many times. It doesn't matter how many times you get it. Eventually you'll get it right. But the problem is simply is that we think We don't even think in those terms. We think simply is that we're here once and that's it. And the religion and Christianity has been so strong about you only go around one time, and that's it. And so you must make a decision either about heaven or hell. And so they use fear to manipulate people. And well, sometime maybe I'll get a chance to read the Book of the Dead by the guy from England. I can't think of his name right now, but who wrote the book. It's interesting that they chose these the Book of the Dead. They basically chose these what we call the what was written back in Egypt, the stories that were told of the afterlife and what would happen. And it's true that you will be weighed. This is what they call judgment. And so when you die, your life will be weighed in the balance. And if your life is not light as a feather, you will come back here again. You'll reincarnate again. You see. And that means about all of us, folks. You see. But if you have understand what the demonstration of what Jesus did, not physically but spiritually, it was a deal with what we call ascension or enlightenment. Coming to reality simply is that I need to get as much knowledge and build as much knowledge as I can about what's happened. And we have that opportunity now that even 100 years ago, most people did not. So you're being given grace and mercy already after what we would call basically 2,000 years, if not more, of simply madness, darkness, why we're here. I think that would be one of the major questions simply is in being your life was simply is, why are we here? Where do we come from? What is my purpose here? In other words, my purpose, what am I supposed to be doing here? In other words, what is my purpose in knowing why I'm here and what can I do to not come back here? Because this place is hell. This is the underworld. This is what people don't understand. This is hell. Everybody, look around you now. Look at how many people are suffering, folks, around you, losing their jobs. Many people die for fucking stupid wars that don't mean a thing. You see, that people die, butchered on the battlefields. What for? What the fuck is this all about? You have to think about this, folks. Oh, we need heroes. No, you don't need heroes, folks. You don't. And why is our country now threatening the war with Russia and all this stuff? Who knows if it's real, if it's a great psyop or not? Why do we fight among ourselves? Where's there such a thing as love? This is not what you think this place is. Many people come here, and billions of people come here. And so the reality simply is that most people are unaware. They're like kindergarten students here. They don't grapple for the purpose. They just simply go and do what other people are doing as part of what I call the crowd mentality expressed that people go. And I did it. I've done it myself in my life, so I'm not any better than anybody else. I'm just asking questions as I'm getting older here, and I'm saying something's not right here. Something's not right. Something's not right. because I know that I came from somewhere that was not like this. It doesn't fit. That's why I question it. If I didn't question it, it would be, oh, well, that's the way it was when I was somewhere else. Meaning simply, this is what happened a long time ago, that, we did the same thing, we warred against each other and killed each other, such and such. But that's not what I remember. That is, reminding yourself simply. That's why you have this idea of more morality. You see, we don't do things like that where we came from. You see, that's why it's so instituted and programmable upon people as soldiers, not to think of themselves as individuals, but as a unit. Very similar to what they basically, this was called up, what you call the Prussians. They would work as a machine, a killing machine, so to speak, and work in unison, not as individuals. And what for? For 200 feet, 10 feet ahead of you? Think about it. And then you have to answer the question simply, another question simply, during the war, I'm speaking of World War II, why would the United States and England and France be allied with a, quote, country called the Soviet Union, which also killed its people, which did not believe in the individual rights of their people. They worked as a collective. And many of their people were killed and butchered before the First World War, much less the Second World War. And why then the Germans, quote unquote, flee from the Eastern Front as things continue to get worse to try to get to the Western Front, because they were knowing that probably what they did not only to the Russians in the battles before, but also simply is that they knew the horror stories of the Soviet Union, you see. So why would these other three countries, supposedly France, Britain, and the United States, be allied with a country that did this type of thing? Doesn't make any sense, because the Soviet Union does not represent anything of what we were supposed to be about, that is France or Britain or the United States, but yet we were allied with them. And then what happened is, most people don't even think about these things, folks. They just don't think. So what happened was simply is those countries in Eastern Europe, like Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and other countries, all the way to Germany, became Eastern Germany, all were simply allowed, the West allowed them, the communists, to take over all those areas and put those people in subjection of slavery and butchery. So going back to simply is that if you have a remembrance of who you were before you came here, you will remember simply is that this is not what life's all about. This is hell. Until you realize that and say to yourself, this is hell, you will think this is a fine place. And when you look around, when you think about it, people in Africa and other parts of the world, especially the poor, don't live that long. Most of them are simply slaves. What do you think about that, you see? What does that mean? It means something's not right here, folks. It's not right. Something's not right at all here. And most people think that they're going to be able to fix it. You can't fix it, folks. This is hell. And so we are taught, we live here, and we're taught by the church that if you don't believe in Jesus dying for your sins and accept salvation, you're going to hell. No. You already are in hell because the church lied to you about these things. And they knew it. I'm talking about the Roman Catholic Church. But then all the other groups have done the same thing. The Protestants teach you the same thing. Oh, if you don't accept Jesus, such and such, you're going to hell. We're already here, buddy. Don't you know that? This is hell. But most people like to live on pipes of dreams and want to live on fluffy little areas and think everything's okay because they can't deal with it. They don't want to deal with it. They want to push it under the rug, not understanding the dilemma they're in. So anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts tonight and share from Alvin Boyd Kuhn. The key simply is Alvin Boyd Kuhn was a theosophist and was a brilliant writer. I think he's written close to 35 to 40 books. This guy put out books on top of books. And I've only touched on probably 8 or 10 of those. And many of these books are over 600 pages long. So anyway, I appreciate you being here. I wish you a marvelous night as I come to the conclusion here. Thank you, and I wish you a good evening, and we'll talk soon. Okay, I've got a comment here. Let's see. Roland Keith. I see if I can get this thing to show up. I don't know why it's not showing. Which is true or in accordance with fact, reality is distant from belief or faith. I've shared that, sir. Already shared that. Truth itself is self-evident. It's not belief or a faith. No, faith is something you got to put belief in. Truth is already there. It stands on its own. It always is solidified. It doesn't move. It doesn't move to anybody's whims or ideas of what it is. Truth itself is a pillar itself. It stands where everything else falls. You see, and then that's why God is truth. It is God. There is Christianity points out and shows these things simply is that reality simply is that, oh, well, God punished these people. Then God's not, if that's the way the church looks at it, then the problem simply is God is not true. You see. Let's see if I can read your next one. I can't seem to get this thing to work more. It won't let me. Why in the world won't let me open these things up? I don't know why it won't open it up for me. Sorry, I don't know why it won't open here. They've done some things here recently with this particular StreamYard, which I'm really upset with, is that it's not allowing me to open up these things and see the comments. I don't know what the fuck it's doing it for, but it's really irritating. And I'm probably going to leave them. I've had it with some issues tonight and yesterday because of this. And I've asked for help and they don't even respond. So this will eventually, I'll be moving to another way of doing it. So it's the comment, it wants to say hide comment. I don't want to hide the comment. I want to know what the comment is. Let me do something else. Let me change over to see if it shows in Facebook here live real quick. Come on. All right, see if it shows. Okay, Roland Key, truth, that which is true, okay, that's what fact, reality, distant from belief or faith. Yes, I've already said that. Okay, now it pops up another window here. I'm really irritated. Hold on a second here. What's happened here with what I said? Hold on a second here. What? It's really frustrating. What simply is that these idiots that we deal with these computers, they think all they do is keep changing everything and won't leave well enough alone. They won't. And it's really frustrating, very frustrating. And so I'm going to do something else, see if it opens up here. One more thing. Come on, open up. That's not the way I want it either. Comments can't get it to work for some fucking reason. I don't understand it. Let me try one other thing here. Let's go. And I'm going to actually, it brings up the message that someone's trying to say something to me. And the problem simply, it covers it up. I don't want to hide anything. Show me the thing. Let's see one other thing here. Hold on a second. One thing else. Go to YouTube and see what it says. Irritating. Okay, come on. Open up. Yeah, it's not doing it. This is ridiculous. So I'm going to have to go. It's getting nearly 12 a.m. here, so I'm going to have to go. Maybe it'll come up after I show these shows tonight. Thank you for making comments here, sir. I'm sorry I cannot answer your things. I've got a black thing covering up your comment, and it's irritating. And sorry about that. All right, we'll talk another time. Thank you. Again, this is Through Science to Religion, Part 3 by Alvin Kuhn of his particular book. Thank you. Have a good evening.